language, and the brain. Neurolinguistics. Neurolinguistics is the study of relationship between language and the brain. Neurolinguistics is the study of how language is represented in the brain. That is how and where our brains store our knowledge of the language that we speak, understand, read, and write. What happens in our brains as we acquire that knowledge? Language areas in the brain. The part shown as Broca's area involved in production of speech sound. The damage to the specific part of the brain was related to extreme difficulty in producing speech. The part shown as Wernicke's area, it's the one that is responsible for the understanding of languages. The damage to this part of the brain is speech comprehension difficulties. The part shown as motor cortex. It's an area that generally controls movement of the muscles for moving hands, feet, arms, etc. Close to Broca's area is the part of the motor cortex that controls the articulatory muscles of the face, jaw, tongue, and larynx. The part shown as arcuate fasciculus. It's a bundle of nerve fibers. This was also one of Wernicke's discoveries and is now known to form a crucial connection between Wernicke's and Broca's areas.
Aphasia. Definition. Those people suffer from different types of language disorder, generally described as aphasia. Aphasia is defined as an impairment of language function due to localized brain damage that leads to difficulty in understanding and or producing linguistic forms. The most common cause of aphasia is a stroke, when a blood vessel in the brain is blocked or burst. Though traumatic head injuries from violence or accident might have similar effects, those effects can range from mild to severe reduction in the ability to use language. Broca's aphasia. The serious language disorder known as Broca's aphasia, also called motor aphasia, is characterized by a substantially reduced amount of speech, distorted articulation, and slow, often effortful speech. What is said often consists almost entirely of lexical morphemes, e.g., nouns, verbs. The frequent omission of functional morphemes, e.g., articles, prepositions, and inflections, e.g., plural, us, past tense, it, had led to the characterization of this type of aphasic speech as agrammatic. Example, I eat and drink coffee breakfast. However, this type of disorder can be quite severe and result in speech with lots of hesitations and really long pauses. Wernicke's aphasia, the type of language disorder that results in difficulties in auditory comprehension, is sometimes called sensory aphasia, but is more commonly known as Wernicke's aphasia. As in this sample, I can't talk all of the things I do, and part of the part where I can go alright, but I can't tell from the other people. Difficulty in finding the correct word, sometimes referred to as anomia, also happens in Wernicke's aphasia. To overcome their word-finding difficulties, speakers use different strategies such as trying to describe objects or talking about their purpose, as in the thing to put cigarettes in for a try. One other, much less common, type of aphasia has been associated with damage to the arcuate fasciculus and is called conduction aphasia. Individuals suffering from this disorder sometimes mispronounce words, but typically do not have articulation problems. Comprehension of spoken words is normally good. However, the task of repeating a word or phrase spoken by someone else creates major difficulty, with forms such as vise and fast being reported as attempted repetition of the word best and worst. Difficulties in speaking can also be accompanied by difficulties in writing. Biotic listening. The essential distinction seems to be between analytic processing, such as recognizing the smaller details of sounds, words and phrase structures in rapid sequence, done with the left brain, and holistic processing, such as identifying more general structures in language and experience, done with the right brain.
The critical period. In the critical period, there is lateralization or one-sidedness. What's the meaning from it? It is the apparent specialization of the left hemisphere for language that usually described in terms of lateral dominance. The latter gene. Genie was discovered in 1970 at the age of 13 and 7 months in a Los Angeles suburbs. She was confined up until that point by her controlling father, who abused her regularly. Because she had not acquired language up until that point, linguists used her.
First, language acquisition. Language acquisition is the process whereby children acquire their first language. First language acquisition refers to the way children learn their native language. Children may acquire one or more first language. For example, children who grow up in an environment in which only English is spoken and heard will acquire only English as their first language. However, children who grow up in an environment in which both German and English are spoken and heard equally will acquire both German and English. Input. Under normal circumstances, human infants are certainly helped in their language acquisition by the typical behavior of older children and adults in the home environment who provide language samples or input for the child. So, infant will produce sounds based on what language input they receive. Caregiver speech or motherese. It's the speech often used by adults with young children. It's also characterized by simple sentence and a lot of repetition. The acquisition schedule. Long before children begin to talk, they have been actively processing what they hear. For example, at 1 month, an infant is capable of distinguishing between sounds such as ba and pa. During the first 3 months, the child develops a range of crying styles with different patterns for different needs. Produce big smiles in response to a speaking face and starts to create distinct vocalizations. Cooing and babbling. Cooing is the earliest use of speech-like sounds. 2 to 5 months old, incapable of producing vowels similar to I and U, velar consonants k and g. Differentiate between I and a, ba and ga. Babbling, 6 to 8 months. A number of different vowels and consonants such as ba 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 and ga ga ga. 9 to 10 months. Variation in combinations such as ba ba da da. Nasal sound become more common in certain syllables such as ma 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 and da da da, interpreted by parents as mama and dada. 10 to 11 months. Expressing emotions and emphasis. It's characterized by more complex syllable combinations. Ma da ga ba. The one word stage. 12 to 18 months produce variety of single unit utterance such as milk, cookie, cup, usually everyday objects used. We sometimes use the terms holophrastic speech, a single form functioning as a phrase or sentence, to describe an utterance that could be analyzed as a word, a phrase, or a sentence. Example: peachy, daddy, spoon. to describe a situation where Daddy had cut a piece of peach that was in a spoon rather than say it in a full sentence like a dog does. The two-word stage. It's two distinct words used together. The two-word stage can begin around 18 to 20 months as the child's vocabulary moves beyond 50 words. Generally, two nouns or a noun and a verb. Example, big boat, doggy bark, mama dress. Telegraphic speech. Between 2 and 2.5 years old, child begins to produce large number of utterances. This stage contains many 3 and 4 word sentences. Child begins to see the links between words and objects and therefore overgeneralization comes in. Characterized by strings of words or lexical morphemes in phrases or sentences. Example, they shoe all wet, cat drink milk, and daddy go bye-bye.
The acquisition process. The child linguistic production appears to be mostly a matter of trying out constructions and testing whether they work or not. Developing morphology. The next morphological development is typically the marking of regular plurals with the S forms, as in boys and cats. The acquisition. Developing syntax. There have been numerous studies of the development of syntax in children's speech. We will look at the development of two structures that seem to be a forming question. In forming question, there are three stages. The first stage is simply add a WH form, where and who. Forming negative. In forming negative, there are also three stages. The first stage is involve a simple strategy of putting no or not at the beginning. For example, not a teddy. The last is developing semantics. Semantic development is a gradual acquisition of words and the meaning they carry. By the age of 5, the child has completed the greater part
An error, then, is not something that hinders a student's progress, but is probably a clue to the active learning progress being made by the students as her or she tries out ways of communicating in a new language. For example, one radical future of most communicative approaches is the toleration of errors produced by students. Traditionally, errors were regarded negatively and had to be avoided or eradicated. Transfer. Some errors may be due to transfer as occurred cross-linguistic influence. Transfer means using sounds, expression, or structure from the L1 when performing in the L2. For example, a Spanish L1 speaker would produce take it from the side inferior, maybe trying to use the Spanish adjective inferior, lower in English, and placing it after the noun as is typical in Spanish construction. If the L1 and L2 have similar features, e.g. marking plural and the ends of nouns, then the learner may be able to benefit from the positive transfer of L1 knowledge to the L2. Interlanguage. Interlanguage is the wrong language spoken by speakers who are not native speakers of that language. For example, the Spanish L1 speaker who says in English she name is Maria is producing a form that is not used by adult speakers of English. Does not occur in English L1 acquisition by children and is not based on a structure in Spanish. Motivation. There are several factors that combine in a profile of a successful L2 learner. Obviously, the motivation to learn is important. Many learners have an instrumental motivation. So, motivation may be as much a result of success as a cause. A language learning situation that provides support and encourage students to try to use whatever L2 skills they have in order to communicate successfully must consequently be more helpful than one that dwells on errors, corrections, and a failure to be perfectly accurate. Input and output. The term input is used as in L1 acquisition, see chapter 13, to describe the language that the learner is exposed to the beneficial for L2 learning. That input has to be comprehensible because we can't process what we don't understand. Input can be made comprehensible by being simple in structure and vocabulary, as in the variety of speech called foreigner talk. The comprehensible input, i.e. using the word triangle to describe a shape, is provided at a point where the learner needs it and is paying attention to the meaning in context. In this type of interaction, the learner experiences the benefits of both receiving input hearing the L2 and producing output speaking the L2. The opportunity to produce comprehensible output in meaningful interaction seems to be another important in the learner's development of L2 ability, yet it is one of the most difficult things to provide in large L2 classes. One solution has been to create different types of tasks and activities in which learners have to interact with each other, usually in small groups or pairs, to exchange information or solve problems. Communicative competence. Communicative competence can be defined as the general ability to use language accurately, appropriately, and flexibly. The first component is grammatical competence, which involves the accurate use of words and structures. Concentration on grammatical competence only, however, will not provide the learner with the ability to interpret or produce auto expressions appropriately. The ability to use appropriate language is the second component. called social linguistic competence. It enables the learner to know when to say, "Can I have some water?" versus "Give me some water," according to the social context. Much of what was discussed in terms of pragmatics, see Chapter 10, has to become familiar in the cultural context of the L2 if the learner is to develop social linguistic competence. The third component is called strategic competence. This is the ability to organize a message effectively and to compensate via strategies for any difficulties. In L2 use, learners inevitably experience moments when there is a gap between communicative intent and their ability to express that intent. For example, a Dutch L1 speaker wanted to refer to in Yovina in English, but didn't know the English word, so she used a communication strategy. She created a way of referring to the object by using vocabulary she already knew, saying the things that horses were under their feet, the iron things, and the listener understood immediately what she meant. Horses shoes. This flexibility in auto use is a key element in communicative success. In a sense, strategic competence is the ability to overcome potential communication problems in interaction. Applied linguistics. In attempting to investigate the complex nature of auto learning, we have to appeal to ideas not only from linguistic analysis, but from other fields such as communicative studies, education, psychology, and sociology. This large-scale individual is often described as applied in linguistics because it represents an attempt to deal with a large range of practical issues involving language, not only auto-learning. Applied linguistics has created connection with fields as diverse as anthropology. See Chapter 20, Neurolinguistics, Chapter 12, Social Psychology, Chapter 19, and Sign Language Studies.